August 7th, 2018 was a Tuesday, the last Tuesday Shanann or the girls would ever live through. Bear in mind, August 14th would be the Tuesday Chris Watts recorded the Sermon on the Porch. By then, Shanann and the girls were no longer alive, so we are now dealing with 6 days before the murders.
I got nightmares in my head, I fear thoughts build up until I can't feel. My mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper. I got nightmares in my head, I fear.
August 7th would also be the last time Shanann's family would see Shanann and the girls alive. Now, one piece missing from the timeline puzzle is the family haircut at Hair Jazz. Although the media has reported on it, it's not mentioned by anyone else. It's also not mentioned whatsoever in the 1,960-page discovery documents. But before we get to that, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do. For those interested in the Koberger case, and in particular in my coverage of the operant psychology, we're going to be doing another episode dealing with psychopathy. This episode is really going to test your understanding of psychopathy. Are psychopaths born or made? Was Chris Watts a psychopath? Was Koberger born a psychopath? Well, look out for that episode later today. Meanwhile, if you're finding this analysis worthwhile, please do hit the thanks button. If you've never hit the thanks button, this is your chance. And let's get started. The family haircut likely happened on the morning of their last day in North Carolina. This is a guess, of course, but it's based on the fact that the family decamped almost immediately after arriving to Myrtle Beach and spent a few days there. It's also assumed that the haircut didn't happen over the weekend or on the Monday when Watts was out of town on his own visiting his family, so Tuesday seems to be a likely candidate. During this haircut on Tuesday morning, co-workers at Hair Jazz also noticed Watts appeared to be standoffish while Shanann was excited about her pregnancy. Watts may have been annoyed by being double-timed, in the sense that several women would be twittering excitedly about their baby, meanwhile Shanann knew full well his feelings on the subject. This was another instance where he would have felt pressured or even coerced. In other words, that feeling of anxiety is increasing. It's leading to very high levels of stress for him. Shanann, in her giddy excitement, may also have mentioned not being able to wait for the gender reveal with her pals back in Colorado, perhaps promising to share the details on Facebook so that her folks and them at Hair Jazz could see as well. This, too, would have set off the alarm bells in Watts's mind. If we think about red flags in terms of this case, well, criminals see red flags as well in terms of their own interests. So on Tuesday morning, Watts's mother-in-law cut her son-in-law's hair as well as the girls. Probably she cut, trimmed or colored Shanann's as well, but we don't know that for sure. We also have no idea to what extent this played out in Watts's mental preparation, or if it did, how much. But consider the mental picture of each family member, one by one, being quote-unquote processed. Each one is covered in a black shawl while someone stands behind them with a sharp silver object, and gradually, snip, 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 pieces of the body fall to the ground and are swept away. One thing is certain, cutting the hair shorter of everyone involved helped Watts limit the evidence trail. Remember, the only traces of anyone found at either crime scene was a blonde hair on the east thief hatch, that's Cece's, and hair fragments in the rear of the pickup. If you think all of this is far-fetched, Lacey Peterson and Scott Peterson also had a haircut immediately before Lacey's murder. And in the Scott Peterson murder trial, Lacey's hair caught in a needle-nose pliers ended up being one of the most vital pieces of evidence. And look at this excerpt from the discovery document, suspected hair from East Oil Tank. Strangely, there's no mention of hair fragments in the discovery either, even though this appears in the media narrative. Now let's drill down into the phone data review. August 7th, 2018. 05:17 hours. Shanann told Eddie Maloney, Chris told me last night he's scared to death about this third baby and he's happy with just Bella and Celeste and doesn't want another baby. Think about those words, scared to death. That's not an exaggeration. He is literally scared to death. Eddie comforted Shanann, telling her Watts is just scared and everything will be fine once the baby is born. Shanann replied, and these are ominous words, he has changed. I don't know who he is. Eddie asked what she means, and Shanann replied, he hasn't touched me all week. He hasn't kissed me. He hasn't talked to me except for when I'm trying to figure out what is wrong. He's been distant since I left. And we are going to come back to this, signs and symptoms, red flags that may predict this sort of thing before it happens. Not easy to do, but not impossible either. What is one of the biggest red flags? Being distant. Later in their conversation, Shanann told Eddie, I told him last night I don't feel safe with him. Think about those words as well. I don't feel safe with him after what he said about the baby. And if he loves me, he would hold me and tell me it will be okay. Give me something. And he did nothing. He did nothing but go to bed. So did he hold her? And that's what it means to be standoffish. It's deliberate. It's real. It's not your imagination. It's not a passing phase either. At 16:26 hours, Shanann told Watts, something else is wrong that you're not saying, because lack of communication doesn't cause you to not be present or touch me or love me. And then this from Shanann. Besides, the lack of communication hasn't been with me in 6 weeks. This fucking sucks. I really don't want to leave here. And Shanann's absolutely right. The lack of communication hasn't come from her side. 17:10, Watts receives a calendar alert, flight WN 1643 from, I think that's Raleigh to Denver. 22:58, Watts's work phone reconnected with a Netgear 27 router, the router in their home. And now all of this happened 6 days before the murder. And think about it, they return home via a flight, and there's a particular way that they return home, a particular route that they take once they get home. And 6 days later, it would be Chris Watts at home waiting for his wife to return, but also knowing exactly what she would do, what her pattern would be when she arrived home. Now, the colorful description is worth noting here. Watts wasn't just anxious, he was scared to death. And as I say, he really was. The conundrum he found himself in ultimately drove him to commit triple murder. The operative emotion, therefore, was fear of what Shanann would do or say within the overarching drama of wanting to preserve his, I never knew there was someone like this in a million years, his love affair with Kessinger. I didn't know someone like this even existed. Well, he really doesn't want to lose her. And what is the biggest threat to his relationship with Kessinger? Her finding out about the pregnancy. We also have confirmation here that Watts wasn't intimate with Shanann all week, and the change in his demeanor was such that Shanann said that she no longer recognized him and even no longer felt safe with him. This was all useful intuition from Shanann, but instead of acting on it, she decided to ignore what her head was telling her and go with her heart. Shanann seems to suspect an affair, but she wants him to admit it before she's going to believe it. At 16:26, about half an hour prior to their flight, Shanann needles Watts for more information. Something else is wrong that you're not saying. She suspects he's cheating on her, but is hoping he isn't. Even if he is, if he can't tell her, then perhaps that's because he still loves her. This assumption was a critical and fatal error. Then, just before 11 p.m., Watts arrives home with Shanann and the kids, the latter likely already sound asleep. This is certainly context for psychological preparation here. In effect, Watts is sharing Shanann's journey from the airport to their home before it actually played out in the wee hours of Monday morning, August 13th. Just 6 days away at this point. Watts would have seen just how tired Shanann was at this time of the day, also how she would have entered the house, when she would have gone upstairs, and with what. In a more general sense, Watts was happy to be home. It meant he'd see Kessinger again at work the next morning, and at work he'd be free of the shackles of home. Watts would also tell Kessinger that he'd tried to save his marriage in North Carolina, but that Shanann wasn't interested. I'm speculating on this point, but if Kessinger found out about the pregnancy, Watts may have said then that he wasn't the father, and for that reason Shanann didn't want to stay in the marriage, implying she was leaving him for the father. In any event, Watts was inverting the reality. He wanted to leave his wife for Kessinger, but he knew Kessinger would feel guilty to be the one breaking up the party, so to speak, and she was. So Watts pretended it was Shanann who wanted out, but for that to work, he needed Shanann to shut up about him and the baby, especially on social media, especially the idea that the baby was his. And so look at this from the discovery documents. Chris is saying he is the person trying to save the marriage and Shanann does not want it. Chris came home in the first 2 weeks of August. They all came back together. Nicole found an apartment that was really nice for him. They had planned on looking at apartments the week of August 13th. The apartment was only for him and his family. Nicole has her own house. He had never asked her to move in with him. So at that point you kind of get the idea that the kids were still part of the equation, at least how she understood it. Christina did believe they struggled a bit financially. Shanann wanted the marriage to work out, but she said she couldn't fight for him without his help. Christina described the girls as being light sleepers. Because of where the girls slept, above the garage of the house, they wouldn't open the garage in the morning. Christina said that Chris would usually go out the front door. She said if there was an argument when she got home, the girls would have woken up. Christina used an example of when she lived with them. They had to leave early one morning, so they'd parked the car outside the garage the night before. Shanann was worried just turning on the car would wake the kids. Christina advised that Shanann would not leave the house without anything. Christina advised it would be hard to imagine Chris hurting the girls because he was very attentive and caring. So Chris wasn't a psychopath until he committed this crime, at least according to everyone around them. Christina advised Chris getting aggravated with the kids as well as the marriage all began at the same time. Christina also mentioned Chris had deleted his Facebook page. Now, I'm not going to take it further than that, but certainly in the original analysis I did, we deal with two additional aspects that we ought to bear in mind as well, which relate to the broader context. The first is to do with Vivint, the second with Anadarko. If you want to read this extended analysis, I'll put a link to that, which takes you to Patreon, in the description. Also, just a reminder for the really interesting analysis on psychopathy. How does it start? Are psychopaths born, made, or a bit of both? So look out for that coming a little later today. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you guys next time.